Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Two for Talking podcast. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. I've got comedian Joe Bartnick and Josh Yohe with The Athletic alongside. We're going to talk some Penguins. We'll also talk some Steelers later in the third segment, some NHL stuff with Joe's preview of the Pacific Division in the second segment. But to start, guys, I hope your travel accommodations are much better than the Penguins had going up to Detroit. A little bit of a bizarre scenario that I don't really recall happening in recent memory.
That was only half the battle because not only did the plane not work to Detroit, but they still had to find a way to get to Sudbury, Ontario by the next day. So, that was we got the message from the Wings, game will now be at 8:30. So I spoke with a couple of people I knew. They said, "Yeah, we're still sitting on the tarmac here." I'm like, "Oh, that's not good." Then they decided it wasn't best to leave at all. So, gentlemen, that gives us 5 preseason games in 6 days. So if you like preseason hockey, this is the week for you. To hell with the baseball playoffs or Monday Night Football. We've got preseason hockey every single night this week.
It's fantastic. You know what happened to me, though, is that I left a family event because I'm like, I have to get back and watch this game on the internet so I'd have something to talk about with Josh. I can't go in blind. And then I'm thinking, oh, the hotel Wi-Fi screwed up. Why is not the game not downloading it? They didn't announce it. It was like, hey, they're not playing the game until it would have been the third period.
So now they're playing in Detroit at the same time as a Monday Night Football game in Detroit. It's going to be a wild time in the Motor City. So yes, all kinds of things going on. But listen, when I'm on a plane, Joe, we fly a lot, right? And whenever they say there's a mechanical problem, we can't take off, people always start bitching. I'm like, what would you rather take off when there's a mechanical? Do you want to die today? It happens. But I think the Penguins were a little embarrassed about the whole situation. Obviously, it wasn't good for the poor people of Detroit, but they're making the game up, so all's well that ends well.
Yeah. They'll make the game up and everything will work out, and everybody just got to go to the arena and drink some beer for fun. They get to go do it again.
It stinks for this podcast because I wanted to see way more guys. I wanted because I'll tell you, last night was fantastic, but we knew that Sid and Gino were great.
Yeah.
I learned that 2 guys in the Hall of Fame can dominate the Ottawa Senators. Yeah, I knew that.
And you know what's funny? I usually poo-poo preseason games because I think I'm an old jaded veteran at this point. You've been to enough of them. It's like, no one's going to care about these a week from now. But I guess the romantic side of me when it comes to the game of hockey did appreciate Sidney Crosby and Gino Malkin showing up in small-town Ontario at a rink they've never played at before. They'll never play again. And they put on it was a cool scene. I mean, and there's people in that crowd who've probably never seen Sidney Crosby play in person before. It's the only time they ever did. And of course, he shows up and not only scores 2 goals, but scores the 2 goals we've seen him score a million times. He plants himself to the left of the goaltender and scores. And it was, as preseason games go, it was fun.
Yeah. And then Gino with the hat trick.
Gino with the hat trick. Of course, it goes to waste because the Steelers sucked, so that no one even talked about it in Pittsburgh for 2 days.
No, we were all in a pissed off mood, so we didn't even. Weren't able to focus, but it was fun to see those two put on a show. I don't think they need to play anymore in the preseason. When you see what happened with Patrick Laine, you see these injuries. I wouldn't. We actually talked with Mike Sullivan about it today, but he said, "Listen, Sid and Gino like to play 3 preseason games." They both told me that. They did, and Sid has told me for years. He always says he loves preseason games. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why would you love preseason? And he said, I don't feel like I have my timing if I don't get those games under my belt when the season starts. Like Mario I think Mario had to be paid extra to play in a preseason game. He didn't want anything to do with that ever. Sid being Sid, of course, he wants to play every night. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see the 2 big boys Tuesday night when the Penguins are back home for the 3rd night in a row. I bet they will play that night. But, they'd like to get their preseason action. So far, so good. I thought they both looked awfully sharp last night.
I thought they looked the sharpest
of
anybody on the ice for the Penguins. And Letang played very well. I want to jump in, Josh, to a lot of things you were talking about in your article, which is always the best. 10 thoughts with Josh Yohe, 10 observations. But you know who you missed? You missed the Nigerian Nightmare. He put a beat on that guy.
I know.
Finally, man, that was great.
I should write a separate article about that. I'm not messing with that guy. And that was good. That was actually good theater. Brady Kachuk was running his mouth on the bench, and there's a little bit of preseason violence, as we often see in preseason games. I was just sitting there watching. I wasn't in Sudbury. I was just watching on TV thinking, man, this is what preseason hockey is all about. This is good stuff.
No, but you know what? Let's be honest, though. I'm making my remarks as I'm looking ahead for I'm looking to against the Rangers, and he fought Rempe in minor leagues last year, maybe even when he played for Ottawa. He hasn't looked out of place in the bottom six from all the guys I've seen in the couple preseason games I've watched.
No, he's fine. He's not a goon. Yeah, those guys don't really exist anymore. The Eric Goddards, guys who really couldn't play. Now he can play a little bit. I think you'll see him in Wilkes-Barre most of the season. But you know what? It's nice to have a guy around who, if you need a little bit of protection, you put him in the lineup. And no, I've been kind of impressed with him. He can play a little more than I thought he could, to be honest with you. His reputation is pretty much just that as a tough guy. No, he's fine. He didn't hurt the cause. That's just another name you can throw into the bottom six. There's about 15 guys now that could theoretically start the season in the bottom six. It's just amazing the depth we're looking at right now.
Well, Josh, he looked better than Kevin Hayes.
Yeah, I haven't been.
I'm saying. I mean, he looked like he belonged way more than Kevin Hayes did.
Kevin Hayes in his day was a really good player. I don't know that it's his day anymore. He just looks so slow.
Exactly.
And I know he's 6'5". He's a big guy, so that can help a little bit. He not only looks slow, but when I watch him in practice and in preseason games, whatever, he just kind of looks like he's out for a stroll. Like I don't see a whole lot of intensity. I don't see a whole lot of nasty. I think he's going to start the season in one of the third or fourth line. I'd be surprised if he doesn't get an early look. And they did acquire the guy. They're paying him. Maybe he'll surprise us, but I've been a little underwhelmed, I think is the word I would use. And talking with some people in St. Louis who watched him last season, they didn't have the nicest things to say. They said he really was so slow. He looked out of place. He did not help the Blues a whole lot. I don't have super high expectations for him, Joe.
No, he looked like he was phoning it in. And I hate this being one of those guys, well, it's the preseason, he's going to turn it up. Well, Sid and Gino made you look bad because they looked like they cared.
Joe, Sid and Gino and Letang were the three best players on the ice last night, honest to God, by far. Not even close.
I do have a little issue. Now, I know I might have just fell in love with the guy when he was a fisherman, but I think you're giving both. I thought Villiers played pretty good last night.
He did.
Maybe not with Sydney, but I think I think there's a place in the top in 1 through 4 for him. I think he looked okay. He looked pretty good.
No, he's changing my mind. But I'll be honest, before the season, I think even though he's only 27, I didn't realize he was still that young. For some reason, I thought he was like 32. He's only 27. He's a young guy still. He was good with the Islanders. He'd score you 15, 20 goals. He was fast. He was a thorn in your side. And when he left the island, he kind of just fell apart. Like the last couple of years, I think he was in Vancouver for a little bit, Nashville he just wasn't the same guy. And I've talked with people who know him, and they all kind of said in the summer, like, this guy might be done. Like, he's been really bad the last couple of years, but he is having a good camp. And he actually looks good on Sid's left wing. I mean, he does. Sometimes certain guys fit. You weren't expecting it. I was surprised when they put him on the top line to start training camp. And I thought that was probably just experimental for a couple of days. Now I'm not so sure that it is. Hey, if he can be the third wheel on that line, do the dirty work, score 15, give Sid and Russ some space, go for it. I'm all for it. Why not? And he's really exceeded my expectations. I've been quite impressed with everything I've seen from him.
He made some nice plays. And the other thing I will say that I noticed last night, which is Owen Pickering looked pretty good.
I thought he did too.
And he was way more physical than I thought. He knocked some people down without even trying. I thought Pickering was supposed to be, like a skinny man's Pedersen. But the kid hit some people and knocked them down.
He did. He's still he's 20 years old, right? I mean, he's still kind of filling out. He was that skinny kid when they drafted him. You can see him getting bigger. I thought he was good last night.
He was excellent. I loved his play.
That was his best professional performance by far. Because sometimes you see him in camp, and he never looks bad, but you can kind of see he's not ready. I don't think he makes the opening night roster, but I'll tell you what, we might as well just get right into it. They've got a problem on the left side. In the top 4, fine. From what I've seen of camp and in the preseason games, Ryan Graves looks terrible. I don't even know if he's playable. I'm serious. I don't give a shit how much money he makes. He has looked. I was watching him in practice in Cranberry this morning. The guy couldn't make a pass. Like, he literally 3 passes in a row in people's skates. Like, he's a mess. I don't know that he gets a jersey on opening night. And there's not a lot of depth there. Right? John Ludwig's intriguing. Ryan Shea's kind of a safe choice, but they don't have a lot of great options. If Pickering wants to be ready at some point this season, I don't think it's the craziest idea to give him a look.
I think if you got someone, I mean, now I'm maybe talking out of my ass, but I think if you put the Nigerian Nightmare, if he makes it, you don't need Ludwig, and I'd play Pickering. Pickering has looked better than Ludwig ever did, in my opinion, last night. I know it's exhibition. I know it's in Kraftville somewhere that even Ron McLean can't find, but he looked damn good. And we know that being Letang's partner is not the easiest thing in the world.
No, God, we all know that. He really did. I
was like, this is fabulous.
There were a few people who jumped out at me, and he was. I didn't really write about him in the article, but I was kind of keeping track of his shifts. Like, man, he looks very poised, like very composed. He's pretty good with the puck too. Like, he makes a lot of smart decisions. So
sturdy. He was sturdy.
Yeah, he was. So no, listen, I mean, after he was drafted, I had a lot of people tell me they thought it was a little bit of a reach. He's not necessarily ever going to be a top 4. We'll see. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But I think he can be a solid NHL defenseman at least, and there's nothing wrong with that. And they need some young guys on that blue line. When you've got Carlson, Letang, as your 2 best defensemen, guys well under their 30s, they need some guys to come along. So we talk about Pickering. That's great. I'll tell you guys who is having a phenomenal camp. I really think Jack St. Ivany's the real deal. I'm telling you, he has been so good. Everybody's talking. All the reporters, like former players, or everybody's watching camp. Everyone says, "Man, this guy's good." Like, this guy, he was so good at the end of last season. He looks like a different guy now. He is so confident. Like, he's shutting people down in one-on-one drills. He looks faster. Like, I really think the right side of their D with Letang, Carlson, and St. Ivany is really set. I'm telling you, this kid looks like the real thing to me.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. Jack St. Ivany, I mean, if he can be better than he was, I mean, I think that was kind of the fear. We talked about him at the end of the season. Like, God, I hope he can be as good as he was last year.
Yeah, he's a Manhattan Beach guy. Joe can drive to his parents' house and watch games with him. It'd be great.
I will. I'll treat. I'll bring the Miller High Life, the champagne. So let's say, what I really wanted to see mixed in last night, that's why I wanted to have the plane. I want to see the Pustinins and the other Russian kids. See how they mix in, because right now, to me, the 2 guys that have stood out that should make. I'll throw the Nigerian Nightmare out, because we know what's going to happen with him probably, but I think Bolivier and Puljujärvi have made a point to stay, and I want to see who the other guys are now.
Yeah, I mean, Puljujärvi, he had the hat trick in Buffalo, and listen, anybody can have a lucky game and whatever the puck goes in, but he's looked really good in camp. I mean, and you have to remember, this is a guy who had major hip surgery. You can come back from that maybe and play, but you're not yourself for a while. I think he's moving a lot better now than he was 6 months ago. So that's encouraging. He obviously has a pedigree. I don't know, Joe, what your thoughts are on Cody Glass. I think he's been pretty good in camp. I don't think he's spectacular, but another guy with a much Puljujärvi in here, pretty similar, right? They're kind of big right wings who were top 10 draft picks who haven't been terrible NHL players, but have never really put it all together. Between the 2 of them, though, I think that they're nice pieces to have, and I wouldn't be shocked if they're both on the ice on opening night.
I don't mind. I don't think Cody Glass played spectacular last night, but he played okay. He was moving his feet. He was fumbling the puck a little bit, but I've been a Glass guy. He was okay with the Predators. He's had an okay career. He's definitely an up. I'll tell you what I would like to see. I would like to have it be a Chari, Puljujärvi, and who did I just say? And Puljujärvi and the other big guy, a Chari, Puljujärvi, and Glass on the fourth line.
Oh,
I would like to see that, and in the third line be O'Connor, Beauvillier, and Eller, and McGroarty up top with Sid. That's my dream lineup right there.
and you know what? I think you'll see that lineup at some point. I don't know that McGroarty is going to be on this team to start the season, and I know I've been saying I think he would be, and he hasn't had a bad camp. I'm just basing it on what I'm seeing in Mike Sullivan's history, the pairings that he has, the groupings he has together. I'm seeing McGroarty with the young guys who are probably going to Wilkes-Barre an awful lot. And that's okay. Like, if that does happen, he might do the Jake Gensel route where he's in Wilkes-Barre for 2 or 3 months and you bring him up halfway. And that's okay. McGroarty, I mean, he's been good. He is who we thought he was. He's not a great skater. Like, that's one thing you notice. His skating could use some work, but man, does he think the game. He is so smart and strong, and he's got the great hands. Like, he's going to be a good player sooner rather than later, no doubt. And I like the sounds of that lineup a lot. Drew O'Connor, I've been saying for a while, I think you can kind of build a third line around O'Connor. Like, I think he's becoming that good of a player. And it was interesting. Mike Sullivan just this morning spoke at length about OC, and he compared him to Joe's favorite player. He said, he's a lot like Rusty, which I thought was interesting. And he talked about how, Sully said when Rusty came to the NHL, he wasn't a top 6 guy. He wasn't scoring a lot, but you could see all the attributes, and he just kind of kept working and working. And eventually the game all came together. He said, when I see Drew, I see a very similar trajectory and similar potential. He loves O'Connor. And you can see why, because Drew kind of checks a lot of boxes, right? And he just keeps getting better and better and better. And much like Rusty, Drew's a guy you can put on the first line or the third line, and he's not going to hurt you. He's just so versatile in that way. So I'm curious to see how they end up using O'Connor this season, but I really like him, and I think he came into his own in the last couple of months of last season.
Plus O'Connor, Eller, third line pairing, number 1 PK.
Yeah,
that's so then you're not wearing out your first line winger.
That's right.
Two more points, and then I know we'll stick. I kind of not downers, and I didn't say anything from Raquel last night, and Gino was on fire.
As I always say, Joe, I don't like those two together. I just don't. I don't think it works.
But it wasn't bad Gino, Josh. Usually it's bad Gino when you have Raquel. That was vintage Gino.
Gino was like, aside from the goals, he was kind of tenacious. Like, it didn't look like a preseason game. Like, he looked fired up for that game, which is nice. I didn't think Raquel did anything wrong. He wasn't bad, but if he's not scoring goals, you're not going to notice him. That's the problem ultimately with Raquel.
Hey, Gino took a bad penalty. I mean, he was in regular season form. Yeah, the other semi-negative is Jari had 2 posts. I didn't think Jari looked like Patrick Waugh either in that game. I don't know. He wasn't on it. I thought 2 posts, no scramble. He played okay. He played like Jari usually does. Enough to lose. Good enough to lose. Good team. They lose.
He hasn't been bad in camp. He's been all right. It's hard to gauge goalies, 10 days into training camp. It takes them a while before they really look sharp. I think Nedeljkovic has been good. He always looked sharp in camp, just like he did last year. It's interesting with Jari too. When you ask Mike Sullivan about him, and I'm not suggesting Sully's being dishonest. I don't think he is. He's going out of his way to butter Jari up publicly right now. Every time you ask him a question, he's in the best shape of his life. We are so delighted with how he came into camp. Now, I don't know if that's a backhanded compliment because he hasn't always been in the greatest of condition. That's always been a knock on Jari. Maybe he is in the best shape of his life. I know this. He is in my opinion, the single biggest X factor with this team because I think Jari has a higher ceiling than Ned. I also think he has a much lower floor. You kind of know what you're getting with Ned. He's going to be fine. But I think they're going to need Jari at some point to be the guy he's capable of when he's on top of his game. And I have no idea what to expect from him come October 9th. I don't think anybody does. But the Penguin season very well may depend on it.
Hey, the kid that came in played good in the second half of the game.
Real good. No,
yeah.
they've got depth at that position like they haven't had just in the organization in a really long time. Your buddy Casey DeSmith, you don't have to worry about that anymore. There's all kinds of qualified guys who are going to be, NHL goaltenders in the next 2 or 3 years. I mean, they're pretty loaded at that position all of a sudden.
I only worried about that midget when I picked Dallas to win the Central. Because Otter's gonna be worn out. Otter always gets worn out. So what do? They bring in the fragile Casey DeSmith. Casey DeSmith is always good until you need him, which is the epitome of a crap backup. All right, I'm done. New season, new whipping boys.
Well, I was going to say, it's such a shame that Casey DeSmith isn't here. It's so much material for Joe.
Oh my God!
No, I can't take those losses. I can't take the over the shoulder where if he was 6 foot, it would have hit him.
Right.
I know Staggy. I know Nedeljkovic is the same size, but I don't know. Nedeljkovic must do better military presses because Casey DeSmith sure looks a hell of a lot smaller than Nedeljkovic.
I was literally standing beside Nedeljkovic in the locker room this morning. He's bigger than Casey DeSmith. He's got like a longer arms. He just looks bigger to me. I don't know. Maybe they're the same height, but yeah, DeSmith even had like a small head. He just looked very small. Like he did. One thing, guys, before we move on to the next segment that we should touch on, which I think is becoming a concern. Erik Karlsson hasn't skated in 4 or 5 days now. He's got some kind of upper body injury. We don't know what. And he started skating for a couple days, and he had a scheduled day off. Then he skated again. Great. Then all of a sudden he didn't skate for a couple of days. And then Mike Sullivan tells us, we're giving him the weekend off. And he didn't skate today. That tells me he had some kind of a setback. I don't know what it is. I sure hope for Karlsson's sake it's not a sports hernia, which is the injury du jour in the NHL right now. And I've not been told that it is. I don't know that. But that's where my mind goes when they shut a guy down and clearly had some kind of a setback. If it's an upper body injury, if it's a shoulder injury, like he can still skate usually. I hope that's not the case. We all know how important Karlsson is for the Penguins, but he's barely skated in a week now. The season starts in 9 days. Growing a little bit of a concern, I would say.
Yeah, I keep waiting to see the day that he's participant, but even Seth Rohrbaugh was able to tweet out that from the side of the road, I think he reported that because it sounded like Seth had a blown tire of some kind.
He did. That was the big media drama this morning. Seth always likes to ask Sullivan the injury questions. So Sullivan walks to the podium. Where's Seth? Said, flat tire. He's on the side of the turnpike. He goes, well, I will call Seth and give him the injury report. Good plan.
I appreciated that from Seth from the side of the road reporting that Erik Karlsson has indeed not skated again. And before we move on to the next segment, I do want to ask you guys, it's kind of, NHL broadly related, but, you mentioned how much Sid loves the preseason games. And then we see Patrick Laine's injury on Saturday night. And, it's just like, I don't know. I haven't seen what's the prognosis. It looked terrible. It didn't look great. And then Josh, you kind of echoed, I think, a lot of people's sentiments whenever you tweeted out about how I think it's enough. I think we have too many preseason games. Mm-hmm. And even, other people were saying, that the hockey related revenue is really important. What do you guys think about the length of the preseason? And is this too much? Are they going to contract it a little bit? Because we can't have stars going down like that.
Yeah, I think the Penguins have 7 preseason games. I think that's way too many. I really do. And I was actually talking with the captain about this the other day. And it's funny because now training camp starts and like 3 days later is the first preseason game. And it used to be you had camp for 2 or 3 weeks before the preseason game started, right? But with the CBA, the players didn't want that. Sid said, I hate it the way it is now. I said, why? And he said, well, because you have to play games immediately. Like your body isn't quite ready for that. It's a very awkward feeling because he likes preseason games, but he likes the scrimmages and stuff first. That's just how he's wired. But I think it's too many games. I really do. 5 preseason games this week. To me, it's excessive. And, I won't say who told me this, but one of the Penguins today told me in reference to the Laine situation, he said it was a terrible hit. He said the guy probably didn't mean to do it, But that's what happens when you have an ECHL skilled level guy, playing against Patrick Laine. Like, that's when people get hurt, because you have some people that just aren't in control of their bodies, and they're playing against somebody who can move so much better than they can. And that's when stuff like that happens. I think it's a pretty valid point.
And guys trying to make a name for themselves.
Sure.
I know hockey, they grab all the revenue they can. I like the idea, though, of I like two aspects of the preseason. One is I just like seeing all the young kids that are going to be a Wilkes-Barre or back at junior. I like seeing them play. I like to see like 2 games with Sid, Gino, and then everyone that's going to play. Not the mixed bag of the defensemen that I'm never going to see again. I wanted to see Shea and Ludwig last night. I wanted to see O'Connor. I wanted to see everyone that's going to play last night play 2 games. And the other thing that I think is kind of a cool idea, it's kind of the Kraft Hockey World thing. But I know some of the rinks aren't NHL regulation or whatever, but why don't they then take the preseason games and put one in Cleveland and put them in all these towns that don't have NHL hockey and get a sold out crowd that's never seen a team like that? Because I think that's the way to do it. Instead of having, and Pittsburgh's one of the more rabid fan bases, instead of having 3,000 people show up in Buffalo, why not have 9,000 people show up in Rochester?
And if I'm not mistaken, they used to do that a long time ago. I remember the Penguins' first Cup year in '91. I don't know why. Sometimes I remember stupid things, but that was the beginning of that season. Mario was out with the back surgery. And so I remember he was with the team during the preseason. They were playing a preseason game in Texas. I think it was like in Houston or Austin or Dallas or something. They used to do that all the time, which I think was smart. Yeah. They used to even play neutral site games. Remember the Penguins used to play neutral site games in Cleveland. They would have one on occasion. And I think they had one in Sacramento one time, like places like that. Like, to me, that's smart if you want to get new fans. Right. And like the thing in Canada, the Kraft Hockey, like, I actually like that because it breaks up the monotony of camp in the preseason. People get to see Sid, who have never seen him play before. It's a cool event. We don't need Pittsburgh at Buffalo with 3,000 people in the crowd. Honestly, it's stupid.
Yeah. It's a dress rehearsal for the arena staff. Give them one of those, and But all right, well, that'll do it for the first segment. On the second segment, we'll talk. Joe's got his article out on twofortalking.com, the Pacific Division preview. But before we get into that, Josh, your friend, insurance provider Bill Neofis, the Reg Dunlap of insurance, and I'm going to keep calling him that unless he wants us to stop, but I can't imagine with his slapshot affinity he would want us to.
I've spoken with him. I think Bill is humbled and honored by that designation. He was particularly delighted when I spoke last week about the Kansas City Chiefs getting every call. We're all troubled by it to some extent, I think. He's a big Steeler fan, so he was probably in a bad mood already when the Chiefs won late in the afternoon window. But listen, whether the guy's in a bad mood or not, he'll be friendly with you when you call him. He's like the nicest guy in the world. Don't forget our buddies at the Neofis Insurance Group. They've been in business. I can't get over it since 1960, the year Maz took out the Yankees. That's how long these people have been in business. And Pittsburgh is like, if you're not good at what you do, like, we're not going to keep giving you business, right? So if multiple generations of Pittsburghers go to this place for insurance, I think that tells you something. And he wants you to know one more time, because it's been 2 weeks in a row. This is the worst time of year for deer. We live in two of us live in Western Pennsylvania, and Joe's from here. We know what the deer situation is like on our highways, on our back roads. It doesn't matter. I was driving home the other night, and I saw like 30 of the bastards on the road just on my way home. That they're everywhere. So remember the tips from our friends. Look for their eyes. You can see their eyes even at night. You can see the reflection. Be extra cautious, especially at dawn and dusk. That's when they're most likely out. Don't swerve. It only makes things worse. And remember, they're like wolves. They go in packs. So if you see one, guess what? There's probably another one coming. So that's our friends at the Neofis Insurance Group, 412-364-3388, or neofisinsurance.com, the best sponsors there are.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bill Neofis. Let's get right into the second segment now. So, Joe, we put it up on the website. It's twofortalking.com. You can see his articles there. And I'll start with the Pacific Division. We'll start at the bottom like we have for the other ones, just to go through it. These are, Joe's rankings. Let's see where Josh has them landing. But number 8 at the bottom, probably not much of a surprise, but the San Jose Sharks with Macklin, Celebrini, nothing much to Celebrini about, I guess, in that league or that city, other than hey, we got the first pick. So what do you think's gonna happen, Josh? Do you think that San Jose is probably in the basement of the Pacific?
Yeah, I mean, they probably can't be worse than they were last season. That would really be something. But it's the classic team in a rebuild, and I'm not sure that organization knows what it's doing right now. I really have issues with a lot of decisions they've made over the years. They're still, I think San Jose and Columbus are probably the two worst teams in the league right now. And I'd probably pick San Jose if I had to pick one that was the worst. They got a long way to go, and Celebrini's going to be terrific. But I also don't think he is a Crosby, Ovechkin, Matthews. That obviously, I mean, he'll be a really good player. I don't know that he's necessarily going to be a franchise player. We will see. But the Sharks are years away from being good.
Joe, what do you think? I mean,
no, I totally agree. I mean, the hotshot goaltender, the Russian kid who came over from Milwaukee from the Predators, he'll get a lot of chances to make the highlight reels because he'll be making saves all night. I mean, they have no defense. Their defense is like a bunch of guys who are going to be depth guys at the deadline for a good team. That Smith kid's a good number 2 center too. They brought in a couple more veterans than usual. But, Mike Greer's a good guy, but he might be in over his head. I mean, San Jose's just waiting to move to San Francisco is basically what they're doing.
Yeah, you might well be right about that. That tends to be where the money is in that part of the world. And that building's falling apart, too. It's actually getting really old. It wouldn't shock me if that happened at some point. And, yeah, this is a bad hockey team. There's really nothing real good to say about where they are right now.
Yeah. Number 7, Joe's got the Calgary Flames, or the Calgary Flames. And even with, Kadri and a couple remaining, they did lose a lot of talent, Joe, didn't they?
I mean, what a talent suck from that team. I mean, they literally lost Markstrom. They lost, remember when their defense was one of the best in the league? Now only Mackenzie Weegar would be a defenseman on a very good team. And of course they lost Tkachuk, which was just huge, and they lost Bennett. It's like everyone's can't believe what a great GM they have in Toronto now. Well, he's the guy that ruined Calgary. I don't understand. I think Calgary's terrible. I just think they're lucky they're in the same division as the San Jose Sharks, so they won't be dead last.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Nobody wants to play there anymore. We all know that's a problem for all Canadian cities. The Saddle Dome is actually one of my favorite buildings because it's one of the only old buildings left, but it's also falling apart. It's not, it's just not a destination city for players right now. And yeah, that team, they're usually consistently, solid, but I would tend to agree with that. I see them taking a little bit of a nosedive, especially with some of the talented teams in that division. They're in a tough spot.
I mean, they still got a Coleman and Popsicle, I can't say his name ever. Those guys play tough, and they somehow suckered Lundberg into playing there. So they'll still play Calgary physical hockey that they like up there, but they have no offense. I don't know what happened to Humidor. Like he just woke up one day like from a nightmare, and he's ended up in Calgary.
And when they got Kadri, Kadri's always been a really good player. He was never the same guy after he left Colorado. He's a number 2 center. He's not a number 1 guy.
Right.
That's basically it.
Yep. Number 6 on the list is Anaheim. Thank God they brought back the proper logo. And the Anaheim, can we call them the Mighty Ducks instead of the Ducks? But, what do we got? What are the Ducks going to do to not wear out Whitehall's John Gibson, like you said, Joe, by Thanksgiving? So do the Ducks have anything?
Well, the thing with Gibby is he's always worn out by Christmas, but at least he might have a few more wins this year. I mean, they are stock loading talent. Leo Carlson's a real deal. I know they're doing like a pitch count with him last year, which is stupid. Troy Terry's really good. I'm a big Killorn guy. Zegras is still there. They got talent. Robbie Fabry can put the puck in that, and I just think this team is exciting. They're going to be really fun to watch. And I'll tell you who's the new captain, Radek Gudas. Remember when he was just a thug and a goon?
Yes.
He's a top 2 defenseman now. I mean, he was great in Florida. I actually didn't think Florida could win last year, beginning of the year when they lost Gudas. That's how important he is. Gudas these kids out here love him on that team. He gives them protection. I think that I almost picked the Ducks 5th, to be honest with you. I think the Ducks are on the way up.
I do too. I don't love their blue line. I think they're still going to give up a lot of goals, even if Gibson plays better. I don't think they're good enough defensively to challenge for a playoff spot. But you mentioned it with all the young talent they have up front. I mean, they really do. And there's a couple of other guys you didn't even mention.
Oh yeah, the flyer hater. I love that guy.
Yeah, we love him, right?
Yeah.
They have a collection of forwards that they're going to get better and better. They're fun to watch. So they have some kind of a building block there. I don't like the blue line. And Gibson, I don't know if Johnny isn't the goaltender he was 5 years ago, or maybe just playing there year after year has worn him out. And it's hard when you're a goalie and you're playing behind a bad team. It's just hard to beat your best. Any goalie will tell you that. So I'm curious about how much longer he sticks around there. I think they have been trying to move him for a while, just because of how much money he makes. So that's interesting to keep an eye on. To me, they're your classic bad team that's fun to watch. And then there's something to be said for that.
And they're going to scare a few more people on lazy Tuesday nights when people in the no show. They're a good enough team now. You give them a couple early power plays and they get up 3-1. They're going to hang on. I think Gibby's star has dulled a little bit. Like I think 2 years ago, I think a lot of people wanted him, and for some reason he didn't go. I don't know if it was his decision or what. And it seemed like his moment in the sun kind of passed for that being the big acquisition that maybe Colorado needed, or a different team like that.
Well, no question. But they're an interesting team. I think Mason McTavish too. I don't know if we mentioned him. Good. They're fun to watch. Their forwards, they'll get your attention. They will. I see a lot of 5-4 losses for them this year.
Pittsburgh, if you have the hockey package, stay up late, because I'll tell you what, I like their announcing crew too. They call a good game. Yeah, they're solid guys. And it's the first guy that I remember saying, like, Ryan Getzlaff from the ladies' tees. I always like that line. When someone's in the circle, like, I love that when he steps into one. I love that line, from the ladies' tees. Great one. Yeah.
Number 5 on Joe's list is Seattle, the Kraken. Bunch of good players, but I guess not enough great players, Joe.
Yeah, I mean they're still living off. They have the 7th or 8th best player from every team, which is good. I mean, Ronnie's biggest mistake was hiring Hackstall to begin with, because they missed their chance to kind of have a little momentum. They need scoring. They need superstars. Maybe Matty Beniers becomes that. They're paying Stevenson like he can be that. I don't think he can be that. They're just a totally medium team. They're in the 5-0. They're going to probably win a few more games than Anaheim. It's where they stand, in my opinion.
They're probably the most average team in the league, right? I mean, you're right. They don't stink. They're not great. I love Ronnie Francis. I don't love the job he's done there necessarily. There's not a lot of star power. One guy who could turn it around for them to some extent, however. Remember a couple of years ago when Shane Wright was the slam dunk number 1 pick in the draft, and all of a sudden he slid down. I think number 4 they got him, and he's going to be in the NHL this season. I speak on a personal level of him because he had played his junior hockey in Kingston, Ontario, which is where my kids live. So I saw him play probably 15, 20 times. I think he's really good. I do, and I don't know why his stock went down. Not a bad kid at all. Maybe he won't be a superstar, but I think he can be a legitimate, first or second line center. I really think he has that talent. If he does, that will help them. They just don't have any star power. They don't have people who will take over games. They're just going to be in a lot of 3-2 overtime games, and that's fine. They'll be in contention for a playoff spot, but they had all that momentum 2 years ago when they stunned Colorado. That was unbelievable. Wow, they're going to be like another Vegas. Nah, they're not. Now, having a Hall of Fame goalie, of course, helped Vegas. But Vegas also made some decisions a little better than Seattle.
Yeah. Speaking of Vegas, they're number 4 on Joe's list. And the Golden Knights, they still got some, marquee players, but not quite enough to push them up to the top of the division.
Well, I always say Vegas is always all in. They always push everything into the pot. And, I think they still got Jack Eichel's an ace. Mark Stone's an ace. I think Barbershev's a Jack. I like Tomas Hertl a lot. I know he's down the last couple of years, been dinged up, but I think Hertl can still be a jack. I think after that, though, they don't have as many face cards as they used to. Although they still got Wild Bill. I'm a big Wild Bill guy. And on defense, Petrangelo's a son of a bitch. He's a great player. But I think they're all a little bit older. They lost some of the defensemen. And Aiden Hill and Samsonov, I just don't like them as much as I like the top three teams in the West. I think they'll probably still make the play or Pacific. I think they'll still probably make the playoffs, but I think they're down a little bit than they were.
Yeah, I think they're a playoff team too. But they were certainly not the same team last season. And as good as they are, they're deep, they're big, they do a lot of things well. Those best teams in the West, talking Edmonton, Colorado, Dallas to some extent, Vancouver to some extent, they are just blazing fast. And I think Vegas has a hard time keeping up with some of those teams. I just think the overall team speed is a little bit of an issue there. So they're a playoff team. And Eichel, if he's healthy, we forget what a great player he is. I mean, he is not disappointed in his NHL career. He's had injury issues. He was stuck in Buffalo for a while, but he's a great player. He proved you can win a cup when he's your number one center. He's that guy. So they're still formidable. They're good. They're a playoff team, but I don't view them as a real contender for the cup.
Yeah. Number 3 on Joe's list is his mistress team, the Los Angeles Kings.
Los Angeles Kings, yes. And it was maybe, I don't even think it's a homer call. One big news out here, it's news everywhere. Drew Doughty is injured.
Yeah.
And that's huge because you talk about a Hall of Famer and, 2 cups, and they kept him in Kopitar till the end. So we had Drew Doughty. I mean, he's one of those guys that I just jumped at me when I first saw him at camp years ago. Like, this guy. Yeah, I love him. But, I'll tell you, they added up on D, though. They got the 2 young kids, Clark and Spence, who are young kids. They play some offense. They brought in Edmondson and the Garikov kid from Columbus. I was like, they got this guy like last year. Great way. I mean, I was blown away how good he is on defense. So they're right there in defense. Up front, they lost Arvidsson, which he was a little pest, and he scored some big. I liked Arvidsson a lot. So they need more out of Fiala. Fiala has shown up here to pick up a paycheck. I'm disappointed in him. They have their own Lafreniere guy. He's going to move it up. He's a good young kid, but mainly Kopitar. If he played in Boston, they'd already have a statue built to him. He's better than Bergeron. I love that man. Adrian Kempe is the most underrated forward in the league. Yes. He buries pucks. He's sneaky tough, man. You can't knock him off the puck. He forechecks like horny, and he has a much better shot. And then my man Quentin Byfield, living up to being the second pick overall. He is a big man. He's getting into his body. The Kings are a wagon when they get it going. And they got Darcy Kemper now. And last year, their goaltending stunk.
Yeah.
And not the Kemper's Patrick Waugh, but that's a big, big, big upgrade. That's why. I'm sorry, one more thing. And they also got they brought in Tanner Jeannot, who went from being a rock star to a nobody in Tampa Bay. Believe me, he's gonna start cracking some skulls out here. He wants his career back. I think the Kings are gonna have a nice season.
They're one of those teams. They look like a football team. Like, they're just so big. They're a nasty, abrasive team to play against. They're good. They're a playoff team. We know what it's been like for years with them. They keep running into Edmonton, and hey, that's tough. I mean, it's the Kings right now. They had the little mini rebuild. It's a well-run organization. They're really good. I don't know if they're great in the Western Conference. That's tough. The goaltending, Kemper's going to have to be really good. And you mentioned Drew Doughty, Joe. Obviously a Hall of Fame defenseman. I still remember the first game he ever played in Pittsburgh his rookie year. I couldn't take my eyes off of him. Like, who the hell is this guy walking on the blue line, like making it look this easy? Just an all-time great player. He truly is. I hope he's not hurt too bad. I don't like seeing all these stars get hurt in the preseason. That's never a good thing for the game when you got guys like Line and Doughty going down. But now the Kings are legit. Those forwards are so good. They're a pain in the ass to play against. They're a playoff team.
Yeah, Doughty's like Letang. He's really like Letang. Maybe a little more defense, a little less offense, but basically the same guys. Just smooth and sweet and offense, and then just tough on D.
And they can play 30 minutes like it's nothing.
You can't get him off the ice. It was the funniest thing because I remember like 3 years ago, right when they're in the depths, when they were really deciding like what's going to happen with the Kings. Like the 2 years they stunk. And I remember just in March, this one game me and Frazier went to, and it's like Doughty wasn't dominating. And I'm like, man, he's packed it in. Like he's ready to go golfing. Like I'm like, trade him to Toronto now.
Thank God they didn't, right?
I know. Yeah, because or else I'd be watching, Eminem out here floating around, living off a Kopitar, Mitch Marner, being soft in the corner.
All right, number 2 on the list is Rick Tocchet's Vancouver Canucks. We love Rick Tocchet and love to see them make it back to the postseason and then really take the NHL by storm last year. So you see them landing number 2 right behind Edmonton, huh?
I love this team. I think the other thing I don't like about this team right now is that Demko knee injury. The only thing with Demko that is not to like, he's kind of brittle. It's really scary. But the Shelov's guy, great backup. I don't know if he can play 40 games though, so they need to square that out. The Pittsburgh kid JT, Brock Besser comeback season last year. Pedersen played great, and another thing, prayers for Dakota Joshua, a guy who I love. Yeah. He's going through some issues, but apparently it'll be taken care of. Not issues. He's a testicular cancer. But they got Sweaty Teddy up there. They got a guy that they have a guy that I wanted for years is Connor Garland. When he was in the Desert Dog, I'm like, the Penguins need him, and they got him in Vancouver and Tocchet coaching them up. I just love the way this team plays. They have the poor man's Cal McCarr, but don't say that in Quinn Hughes. And how about Hronek? The Detroit game away. He's like the Dumoulin out there. He's playing incredible hockey.
When I saw Vancouver play in person last year, Hronek stood out to me as much as anyone. Like, what a good player this guy is. I love that guy. I think they are a real cup contender. They had some cap issues, and yet I thought they had a great summer. Like, they made a lot of good decisions. They got Dakota Joshua for a little cheaper than I thought they could. They made a lot of sneaky good moves. Demko's the key. I think in terms of pure talent, he might be a top 5 goalie in the league. I think he's that gifted. He's a big guy, so talented. He just gets hurt all the time. If he's healthy, they can beat anybody in a 7-game series. I truly believe that. And their goaltending was still good without him last year. But I think he's the kind of guy that can put you over the top. Miller was JT's turned into a real star out there. Pedersen was not good in the playoffs. I don't know what was going on with him. I don't think he was 100%, but assuming he's got it together, there's not much in the way of weakness on that team.
They brought in Forbort, they brought in Soucy, they brought in Descharnais from Edmonton. And the other thing they brought in Jake DeBrusk. He's going to score 25-30 for Ricky T.
Hey. Absolutely, he will. No, he's a perfect fit with that team. And I know we like him, so we have personal bias, but Rick Tocchet's a hell of a coach. I mean, look at the job Rick Tocchet and Jim Rutherford have done in Vancouver. I mean, really, it's just the way it is. I'm so impressed with those guys. They are a real live cup contender. There's zero doubt about it.
It's so funny too because we all like Barbecue Bruce. Remember Canada was treating Barbecue Bruce like, how can you be treated like that? Oh my God, yeah, because they got a chance to get Rick Tocchet. That's right. Why they got rid of him.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Bruce is the kind of guy that'll make a bad team decent or a decent team good, but he's not. He doesn't have his name on the Stanley Cup. There might be a reason for that.
Yeah. Rick Turns does out there is. As a Penguin, not a Flyer, by the way.
Right.
There you go. Have a drink.
And speaking of cup contenders, number 1 on Joe's list, no surprise, the Edmonton Oilers. Can they make it back to the Stanley Cup final? I guess is the big question. But they've paid up. They've got Leon locked up. They've got a pretty good team up there.
Yeah, I mean they have they have the best player on earth and they have a top 10 guy. I'm a little down on Leon. I was always big on Leon. The last couple years, a little down on him. I think a big key first and Hyman, how he turned into perfect. He's their Chris Kunitz as far as he knows how to go to the net. He knows how to get open. I mean he's perfect on that team. The most impressive thing to me in that team that I've seen pop out recently, though, is Evan Bouchard has absolutely become a number one defenseman on a cup-winning team. And they get him, Ekholm fit right in perfectly. And then Darnell Nurse can't play any worse than he did last year.
No, he cannot. Listen, if you had to pick one team that's probably the favorite to win the whole thing, it's probably Edmonton. A lot of it, I think, is just as a hockey fan, if you know your history and if you appreciate McDavid's place in the game, you just know he's right at the age, right when he's supposed to do it. And he's still in his 20s. That's when Gretzky did it. That's when Mario did it. That's when Bobby Orr did it. Those guys of that Crosby, guys of that caliber, that's when they start winning them. And of course, they came so close last season. Painfully close. They almost pulled off the greatest comeback maybe in sports history. Nobody's ever won a championship down 3-0 in any sport and come back to, it would have been a remarkable thing. They fell just shy. They have what's really an unstoppable power play, and nobody's been able to figure it out. It's remarkable what their power play has done. You add it all up. They are certainly a team to be feared. They also deal with a lot of pressure, and they went through the grind until late June last year. That can affect a team. It's not always easy getting back a second year in a row, and there are some heavyweights in the West. They might have to go through LA in the first round and Vancouver in the second round and Colorado or Dallas. That's not easy. Those are some great hockey teams, but Edmonton, they'll probably win the President's Trophy. They're built to win in the regular season. I don't know who's going to slow them down.
Well, I think it's great that Skinner, it's his job now. He's solidified as the goaltender there.
He's
so
good.
yeah, I think they might have they might only have maybe the fourth or fifth best overall roster in the West, but they have the best player. So usually when Sid shows up or when Mario shows up, they win.
No, that's right. That's
when the chips are down, and
he
didn't show up in game 6 or 7, although he still won the Conn Smythe. But who's complaining?
and with all due respect to, you look at the best players in the game right now, whether it be McKinnon, McCarr, Matthews, 37-year-old Sid, Kucherov, they're all great, but McDavid still, he's in his own league. And anybody who disagrees with that just
player hater
is a fan of one of those other players and doesn't want to acknowledge that McDavid is an extraordinary player, one of the greatest of all time, in the very prime of his career. He's different. And you see it anytime you watch him play. So they'll have a huge season, I have no doubt. It all comes down to winning 16 playoff games for them, and they haven't been able to do it yet.
That's the whole key, Josh. As fun as it is watching preseason, then even funner 82 games, it doesn't really matter until April 18th.
Especially for Edmonton, because you know damn well that team's going to make the playoffs very comfortably. I don't know if Hyman can score 50 again. The season he had, and I give him credit, he's a great player. That might be tough to pull off, but McDavid is good for 2 points a game. He's going to put up 150 points.
I tell you, the one asterisk on this whole team is Evander Big Daddy Kane. He's out for. They're not going to pull the sit you out until the last day of the season, then come back in and save all the money. He's out 4 months because they don't need him to beat Ottawa or to beat anybody in the regular season. But he was sorely missed in the playoffs.
Oh,
and they probably win. I don't know. They have a better chance of winning if he played. So they hope to get him back, and I think if he's back, that really adds another tier to the roster. And they did get Arvidsson, my guy. So they've got even better.
Arvidsson's a good player. I really like him. And Evander Kane gets a lot of attention for some of his off the ice issues, and perhaps deservedly so. He's a hell of a player.
Yeah.
We almost, I think, sometimes forget how good of a player he is and how big and talented he is. He gives them, when that guy's a part of your secondary scoring, that's a scary thing. And they're a scary hockey team. They should, even though they've made a lot of mistakes over the years with some of their front office decisions, you look at the collection of talent there, and they should win it all on paper, but they never do. And it's kind of the point, Connor's going to be 28 in January. He's not old. He's right in his prime, but if he gets to 30 and he still doesn't win a cup, then all of a sudden the pressure just intensifies times 10. So it's going to be fascinating to watch them this season.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe this is the year they do it. Well, that'll do it for our recap or our preview, Joe's preview of the Pacific Division. On the third segment, we're going to come back and talk a little bit of Steelers. They had a stinker in Indianapolis. We'll talk about that in the third segment of Two for Talking. Welcome back to the third segment of Two for Talking. And, on twofortalking.com, I'm, occasionally chipping in a little blog here and there. And last week I wrote that the Steelers might have a historically good defense, and maybe that's all they would need. And I did preface it. This comes with a lot of ifs and italics and all that. And that potentially historic defense absolutely laid an egg yesterday against Joe Flacco. And I don't know if you guys felt this way, but the moment Anthony Richardson went out of the game, I was like, that's the worst thing. And it got, Booger McFarland, put it out there. Randy from DVE put it out there. I'm like, we all knew it. All of us Steelers fans are like, oh, this was bad. So, it just, we got tore up by Joe Flacco. Third downs. How many third and longs did we give up? And then I don't know, guys. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the defense, but then on the offensive side, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Is it Justin Fields or is it Russell Wilson? There's, we've got fumbles on the 3-yard line. We've got going backwards 20 yards and fumbling the ball. I don't know. I don't know where they go from here, but yesterday was not a good day in the Pittsburgh sports world, was it?
Joe, I'm telling you, when the Steelers get off to a good start and then they lose that first game, the whole city goes nuts. Everybody wants blood this morning. I was like at a gas station and everybody just looked angry, like in a bad mood. I love it. They played a bad game. It might be a historically great defense. Even historically great defenses, have a couple of bad days. But I felt the same way when Flacco came in. I was like, Flacco was really good with Cleveland last year. He's seen the Steelers a million times. He kind of knows what they do. And he played well. I give him credit. The guy can still, make some really accurate throws. He was good. I just thought the Steelers got pushed around at the line of scrimmage on both sides. They just didn't look prepared, Joe, in the first quarter. I don't know what was going on, but man, both sides of the ball, the first half hour of that game, that's where we can talk about Pickens' fumble or whatever other mistakes they made that cost them the game, but they lost the game in the first 20 minutes when they fell down 17-0. You can't do that, especially on the road.
No, I caught the first half on a plane, and it just looked to me like the Lions were getting pushed around. And I felt the same way when the quarterback went out, because going back to when I was a little kid in the 70s, the curtain, they'd knock Kenny the Candle Anderson out. All of a sudden, the throwing Samoan Jack Thompson would come in and beat us somehow. Yeah, we always second backup quarterbacks have hurt us for 50 years.
I will reference Drew Bledsoe when Brady got hurt in the AFC Championship game, and Bledsoe came in and looked great. Like that happens.
Yeah, but we lost the line of scrimmage, which is all the people need to know.
That's right.
That's what really happened. We lost the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
And I thought Fields played good. It's funny, he played good, and then the snap came back to get him. Like
Mm-hmm.
It is funny. Again, the first snap of the game, he almost fumbled too. The handoff to Najee. I don't know. That's the second time in 4 games the first snap of the game has been a problem. And then I don't know if apparently it was his fault on the shotgun snap. From what some of the players and like Frazier snapped the ball at the right time, and Fields for whatever reason wasn't paying attention. He still makes those mental errors that will drive you nuts. But on the whole, if I had to add up 10 reasons why the Steelers lost yesterday, he wouldn't be one of them. And I thought he was pretty good. And he threw for over 300 yards and a touchdown, and he ran for 2, and he only had 1 turnover. And it was a bad one, but still only 1. And, if Pickens doesn't fumble, probably another touchdown on that drive. So it's hard not to feel good about Justin Fields and the way he's playing. I still think you leave him in even if Russ is ready to go. I kind of feel like he's getting better every week. They lost that game on defense more than anything. The Steelers pride themselves on defense and being able to run the ball. They couldn't do either yesterday. That's why they lost.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I'll tell you, you guys know me long enough. I'm not an anti-Tomlin guy. Do I think he's Bill Belichick, George Halas, Chuck Noll? No, but why didn't he kick the field goal?
Oh, I know.
I didn't. I mean, it's revisionist history, but
He lives in his fears, and then goes for it on 4th and 1 to prove that he doesn't live in his fears on the own side of the 50.
He also threw a challenge flag for no reason, like 3 plays after he should have thrown it because Najee had a first down, and clearly it was a bad spot. And then they ridiculous, not a good looking play on 4th down when Fields was stuffed.
And I also know, I know I'm a Najee guy, and I know that he should have just went out of bounds and not tried to fight for the yard. But when does a running back or anybody not get that call? The guy fell out of bounds.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that's a real BS call.
He had a tough time. I mean, there was nowhere for him to go yesterday. I know his numbers weren't impressive, but he was getting crushed the second he took the ball. I mean, he had no lanes. He also didn't look. He had his arm in a sling after the game against the Chargers. And he played. I don't think he's 100% clearly. He didn't quite look right yesterday. And Warren being out wasn't good. And then Patterson looked great, and then he got hurt. So it was a confluence of events. It was just a bad performance. But you know what? They're still in first place. They're 3-1.
Yeah.
And the schedule is you get Dallas without Parsons next week. Then you get the Raiders who stink. Then you get the Jets who aren't great. Then you get home to the Giants. I hate to play the schedule game, but they should be 6-2 through 8 games. They really should. And if that's the case, okay. They're fine. They're not a great team. They're gonna. But even look around the league, guys. Buffalo look like the best team in the league, and then they go to Baltimore and just get their asses kicked on the Sunday night game. You can every week. There's Kansas City's 4-0, but they haven't looked good in any of those games, and all the receivers are hurt now. So the NFL is just a strange product. You literally don't know what's going to happen from one week to the next.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump off on that point, but real quick point: we all signed up for 3-1 a month ago, so
that's
we're
right.
3-1. Let's all be
Absolutely.
happy. But the NFL product is exactly what, because you watch Saturday, the NCAA product is incredible. That Alabama Georgia game was absolute. I was watching it in Philly with a bunch of non-college football people, and then their jaws are dropped. Like there was 2 catches that would have made Lynn Swann blush in that game. I mean, that was an absolutely incredible football game.
Yes, an incredible spectacle of a football game. That was one of the great college games ever. It really was.
Yeah.
I mean, you consider if Georgia almost pulls off being down 28-0 in Tuscaloosa, for God's sake, and then just like that, they lose it. I hope those teams play again, and I suspect they will. And we will. I'm not a huge college football guy, but I'll watch those guys play every week. I mean, that was unbelievable.
It's just incredible.
They've got something right with these mega conferences, I think. We've had enough of, the big teams just beating up on random, Indianas and all that kind of stuff.
And you know what, guys? I know some people say there's too many teams in the playoffs. I'm actually looking forward to the college football playoff. I think it's great.
They're going to be awesome.
There was nothing else to watch in the middle of December other than regular season hockey and you're going to have all through December. You're not going to watch if Penn State goes to Alabama for a playoff game. I'll be watching. That'd be great. No, it's college football is pretty hot right now, and you can see why.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the Steelers. I mean, I've been on record saying that I don't think the Ravens are very good, but now it's just Lamar. But I gotta say,
last night,
Derrick Henry being Derrick Henry is not the piece. I did not have that factored into the formula. He looked pretty darn good last night. And Lamar, Lamar could take any team to the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? He's just that good. I will stand on that. I wish people hate on Lamar. My God, would I love to see him in a Steelers uniform.
I'd take him.
Yeah. But 3-1, like you said, Joe, a month ago we would have taken it. So let's do it. Let's go 3-1 every 4 sets and then fizzle out in the first round of the playoffs. So, that's what'll happen. But no, that'll do it for us here on the 2 for Talking. If you want to email the show, it's contact@2fortalking.com, and we will talk to you guys next week.